In this video, we'll walk you through the steps of setting up a development environment for CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8 using VMware Fusion 7, Windows 8.1, and Visual Studio Express. Windows 8.1 and Visual Studio are both requirements for developing apps for Windows Phone 8. For the purposes of this video, we'll also assume that you either don't have access to a Windows PC or that you want to develop Windows Phone 8 apps on your Mac. Either way, running a virtual machine is a great way to install everything that you need to develop apps using CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8. Keep in mind that over time, the versions and system requirements may change for the software that's discussed in this video. So for now, just take note of the basic concepts and make any necessary adjustments to your environment as needed. Also keep in mind that you'll need to have plenty of hard drive space available to store the virtual machine and any of the installed software. After installation, our VM will be over 20 gig, and during Windows installation, you'll be expected to have at least 60 gig of free space available. So having plenty of space is very important. So the first thing that you'll need to do is install the software for running Windows on your Mac. For this video, we've already installed VMware Fusion 7 on a MacBook Air with 8 gigabytes of RAM. In our final configuration, we'll allocate 4 gigabytes of RAM to the Windows VM, and we'll leave 4 gigabytes of RAM available to the Mac OS X. You can download a 30-day trial of VMware Fusion 7 from the VMware website, which will also allow you to test the setup of your hardware before investing money in the final solution. While you're there, you may see a VMware Fusion 7 Pro option that provides advanced networking features, but it's not required for Windows Phone 8 app development. The regular version of VMware Fusion 7 works just fine. So once you have VMware installed, you'll need to install a 64-bit version of Windows 8.1, which is required for development of Windows Phone 8 apps. For this video, we installed a 64-bit version of the Windows 10 Technical Preview, which is a public beta version of Windows, but you may feel more comfortable installing a commercial version of Windows 8.1 as part of your permanent development environment. So let's go ahead and set up our VM and install Windows. So let me just bring up the virtual machine here, the VM. This is our previous VM that we set up just to show you what it looks like in the end. There's 21 gigabytes of space, like we said, it's taken up, so you'll need to make sure that you have plenty of space available. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and delete that for now. And what we'll do is we will cancel that and start a new virtual machine. I've already downloaded the ISO file from Microsoft's website. So if you're interested in the technical preview, you can go to Microsoft's website, read all about it, and you have to sign up for their Windows Insider program. I've already done that, so I'm just going to make sure that I download a 64-bit version of the software. So I did that. Again, that's almost 4 gigabytes worth of space that you'll need on your hard drive just to store that locally. So what I'll do is, let me just bring that back up here, install from disk, and what we'll do is say continue. And then let me just clear that list. So if we come here and they don't have anything in the list, what you can do is you can go and look for it. I know it's on my desktop in my Windows 8.1 folder, so I'll just click that. And now I have my ISO file ready to go. I'll just click continue. Now at this point, you are going to get some standard configuration settings. Windows is being set up. It takes a capacity of 60 gig, and we're going to allocate 2 gig of memory to it. But we want to bump those settings up just a bit to make everything run smoother. So we're going to click on Customize Settings. And at that point, you'll be given the option to set a name for your environment. We're just going to leave it at the default and click Save. Now it's going to come up with the settings for this virtual machine. So what I can do is I can go in and I can change the settings for the processor and memory, and we'll also turn on virtualization so that we can have our emulator in our Visual Studio environment. So let's go ahead and choose processor and memory. By default, we are given 1 processor core and 2 gig of memory. But what we want to have is 2 processor cores, and we want to have 4 gig of memory. And having 4 gig of memory will just make things run a whole lot smoother. So if your machine doesn't have 8 gig and you can't split it up like that, just know that if you can give it more than the recommended amount of memory, then things will just run a whole lot smoother. Otherwise, it'll run just fine. It just won't run as things won't complete as quickly. Now, during development, you'll probably want to test your app using Windows Phone 8 Emulator within Visual Studio. And so to run the emulator, you'll need to adjust the virtual machine settings to allow support for Microsoft's Hyper-V technology. Adding support for Hyper-V basically allows you to run the Windows Phone 8 emulator and to load and run your apps during testing. So without Hyper-V support, Visual Studio throws a bunch of errors and Windows Phone 8 emulator will not run. So what we need to do is click on Advanced Options. And then we need to check the box for enabling hypervisor applications in this virtual machine. That turns on Hyper-V support within our virtual machine. So then we can click the Show All button here, and then we can click on the Advanced option here. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to set the preferred virtualization machine. And we want to set it to Intel VT-X with EPT. Now, if you're interested in what all these terms mean, by all means, read up on them. But for now, just know that we need to enable these settings. So go ahead and click Show All. And we have one last thing to do before we're done. We need to actually edit our virtual machine package file. So what we will do is we'll open up our Finder. And then we'll go into our Documents folder, our virtual machines folder. Then we'll need to right click on our virtual machine package, show package contents, and then we need to find the virtual machine package file that has the extension VMX. So we'll right click on that and then we'll say open with text edit. Now once we have that available to us, what we'll want to do is expand it here, and we're looking for, basically what we want to do is go down to the bottom of the file, and then we want to type in some settings there. So at the bottom we want to say hypervisor.cpu id.v0 equals false, and the false will be all caps. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but look at how this is formatted here. It has a different type of quotes than what we need. And if you want to make sure that you don't have any formatting issues, just go ahead and copy one of the lines above it. Like I've got this false here. I'll just copy and paste that there. And what that does is it just makes sure that I'm getting exactly the right format of quotes that I need. So I should have hypervisor.cpu id.v0 equals quotes false, and all caps there. And so once I have that, then I can click, then I can save, and we should be done. Now we can close that. We can also close our settings, and now we can start our virtual machine. And up to this point, we've just been setting the configuration settings for the container, but now we can actually go in and install Windows. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now, like I said before, I have downloaded the ISO file from Microsoft's website. And so everything here is going to go ahead and start up because we've already pointed it to the ISO file. Now that's going to make our installation here take about 5 to 10 minutes just because it's a pretty speedy process. But if you have to download it from the 4 gigabyte, almost 4 gigabyte ISO file from the internet, it may take a little longer depending on your network speed and also depending on the speed of your computer. So I'm just going to walk through these wizard installation files. So here you just go install now. It's pretty standard stuff. Pretty standard installation. If you're using the Windows 10 preview, it's probably going to ask you at some point for your license key, which it will also do if you are installing it from a copy of Windows 8.1. So it's all just really standard stuff. So I'll say OK. And I'm going to install Windows right from scratch. So here's the part where it's asking us for 60 gigabytes of space. So make sure that you have that space available before you start the process. And then we'll just click next. Now I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and then I will come back at the end and we will get Visual Studio Express 2013 installed. All right, once the virtual machine has been installed, is configured, and is running, then you'll need to install a version of Visual Studio to create and build CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8 apps. So for this video, we'll install Visual Studio Express 2013 for Windows, which is available as a free download from Microsoft Visual Studio website. Then once Visual Studio Express 2013 is installed, we'll be ready to install CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8. So let's go ahead and install Visual Studio now. So we'll just pop open Internet Explorer here. And then we will search for Visual Studio. And we can go to Visual Studio 2013 downloads. And let's go ahead, and if we look here, we'll see that there are several different versions. But we want the Express version. So there are a couple different versions. There's a version for web, there's a version for Windows, and there's a version for Windows Desktop. Though we want the version for Windows because the Windows Desktop version is only for Windows Desktop apps. But if we click on the version for Windows here, we'll see that there is actually a support for Windows Phone and the Windows Store. So that's the one that we want. So what we'll do is we'll just scroll down, and we can either download the full DVD ISO file, or we can download a little stub file, a little exe file. That's a whole lot faster to get started. So let's go ahead and just click on Install Now. And then we'll just say Express 2013 for Windows. We'll go ahead and download that. And you may get this little security pop-up that tells you that you're trying to download something. You can go ahead and save it to your desktop if you want to, or you can just go ahead and click Run. And it'll go ahead and download it and start the installation process. Now, this is a wizard-based installation as normal, so I'm just going to select the I agree for the terms and service. I'll just click Install. I'll say yes to this security message here, and then we're off to the races. Now, I will say that if you run into an issue while you're downloading this inside the virtual machine, inside the Windows environment, if you run into some issue and you can't get access to that file, you can't download it for some reason, then what I recommend then is going and opening up your browser inside of your Mac, and then go to that same page. So go to the Visual Studio community page and download from there. So what you can do is you can click on that same install link. It'll take you here where you can click on that, and then it will actually download that file for you to your Mac environment. Then once you have that, you're going to need to get it into the Windows environment, which is inside of your virtual machine. Now, if you don't have the virtual machine file sharing on between the Windows environment and the Mac environment, then what you can do is, if you don't want to turn that on for some reason, then you can actually just install OneDrive or create a OneDrive account, and then just upload that exe file to your OneDrive account, and then you can, when you're in the Windows environment, you can actually log in and pull that same file down to your Windows environment. And so the OneDrive, if you haven't used it, is very fast. So it's a great way to share files between those two environments. And it's great as well for if you're using it on the go, and they give you, I think, 20 gig worth of space right out of the box. So it's a great way to file share. So let's go back to our VMware. So it's installing here in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this. I don't need this anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust the screen resolution here so that we have a little bit more real estate to work with. So I'll just say Control Panel here. And then I want to adjust the screen resolution. And I have a support here for, actually I have support for 1920 by 1080, but we'll go ahead and go with this 1440 by 900. That'll give us a little more real estate, and we can still see our Mac environment and the Windows environment at the same time. So I'll just apply. So that gives us a nice windowed screen there, and we can say yes, keep the changes. And then we'll close this, And we'll go ahead and let Visual Studio run in the background, and when it's done I'll come back and we will finish things up. All right, so once Visual Studio Express 2013 is installed, you're ready to install CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8. Now, if you haven't already, watch the Corona University video entitled Installing CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8 for more details on how to complete the CoronaCards installation process. But for now, let's go ahead and just kind of step through the steps here. So what I'm going to do is I'll click on Windows. I'm going to actually pull this from OneDrive here. So I'm going to go into my OneDrive, which I have already set up and installed and put some files into. So I'm going to go into the CoronaCards here and get my my CoronaCards file. Now, like I said, if you haven't been to the tutorial on this, do watch the video. It shows you where to get the files and how to install them and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my Visual Studio is pinned to the taskbar here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close it because what we need to do now is we need to install CoronaCards and we need Visual Studio to be closed for that. So I'm going to go into my folder here and I'm going to double click on CoronaCards. It's going to bring up the installer and ask me, yep, I want to accept the security notice there. Then I'm going to go ahead and just walk through the wizard and install. And all of this is covered in the complete tutorial, so do be sure to watch that. And then I should be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I don't need that anymore, and I don't need this. So I'll go ahead and start Visual Studio. And now I have everything that I need to create a CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8 app. I've got Windows installed, I've got Visual Studio installed, and I have CoronaCards installed. So I'm going to go and create a new project. And then under Visual C#, I'm going to choose CoronaCards app. I'll just accept all the default values here and click OK. What it's going to do is it's going to create a project for me. It's going to create basically a sample app. The Hello World sample app for me is going to be a part of that. So if I go under Assets over here on the right hand side, there's a Corona folder. If I expand that, then I see my config file, my main.lua, and my world.jpg file that is going to serve as the background. So if we double click that, it'll open up our main.lua file, and this is all familiar Corona SDK code here, or Lua code. So I'm going to choose to use the emulator before we set up Hyper-V support for this virtual machine. So I'm going to go up here and just click the drop down and choose emulator. And so once I do that, I can go ahead and hit the play button and I can build the app and load it up in the emulator. So it takes just a second for the emulator to kick in and start everything up. But once it's up and running, you will have a good look at the Hello World app. So there it is. It comes up. It takes it just a second to load everything up. It looks just like a Windows Phone interface, and then once that's booted up, it will bring up the Hello World. Okay, so there's our Windows Phone interface. You can see in the background that it's building files and deploying files and doing everything that it needs to do down here in the output pane. And now here comes our app. So now it's building everything, loading the app onto the device, and then there we go. There's our Hello World app. Now you'll notice some things over here on the side, some numbers that are kind of over here on the right hand side of your app. Those are a part of the virtualization, the emulator and the Hyper-V virtualization. But once you load the device, the app on your device, then that goes away. So you won't see those. So don't worry about that. It's just a part of the emulator and the virtualization stuff going on there. So let's go ahead and just close that for the moment. And then what I'm going to do is I actually have a Windows Phone here. And so what I'm going to do is next I'm going to choose, well actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the phone. The phone is plugged into the computer right now, but it's not connected to my virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the phone from the USB connection, and then I'm going to go ahead and plug it back in. What that should do is prompt VMware Fusion to say, hey, what do you want to do with this device? And because we'll need to connect our Visual Studio to our device in order to load the application on our device, we're going to go ahead and say connect to Windows. And if you want to go ahead and say remember my choice, you can do that, and it'll remember it every time. So go ahead and say connect to Windows, and then you can go up here to the menu again and choose device. Now once you're wanting to load the device or load the app onto your device, what you'll need to do is you'll need to open your phone. You'll need to unlock your phone, so you'll need to slide up the home screen there and show all the tiles, and then click on device. And then once you do that, then what happens is Visual Studio will go ahead and load that up onto your device. So here, let me get a little shot of that. So here you can see in the background the video is showing that the files are being built and they're being deployed to the device. And then you can see here that the hello world is showing up on my device. So now I am able to load the device onto my Windows phone, or load the app onto my Windows phone. Now you may notice, like I said, that the numbers are still there on your app and when it's loaded onto the device. And what that is if we go ahead and close out the application on the emulator. So let me just go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and close that out on the device. So there we go. I said emulator, but I meant device. To close out that, then what we do is we come back to the home screen. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and go to my device and actually find the application itself. So I'll just go ahead and start that up. And then you can see that when we actually start the device, or start the application on the device without going through Visual Studio, then we don't get those numbers. It's basically just your app as you would expect. And that's a look at how to set up a development environment for CoronaCards for Windows Phone 8 using VMware Fusion 7, Windows 8.1, and Visual Studio Express 2013. If you have any questions about this process as you go along, be sure to visit the forums on the Corona Labs website. And to learn more about working with Corona SDK, go to coronalabs.com/university.